Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 359. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Sunday, May the 5th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Topic of today's essay, cause and effect. And that's effect with an E, not an A. You know the rule, don't you? Effect or affect. Effect with an E is a noun. Effect with an A is a verb. How do you remember that? Think of the word raven, as in Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven. Remember, A, verb, E, noun, R-A-V-E-N. So, cause and effect. Effect in this case is a noun, so it's spelled with an E. Okay, now that we're done with the grammar lesson, why are we talking about cause and effect? Well, because cause and effect, dear listeners, is the reason for everything. Sure, sometimes things are just luck. Sometimes things just happen, happenstance, whatever. But cause and effect means that something happened because something else caused it to happen. Okay, and there's three things we're going to talk about today that are cause and effect. One of them is there's a massive exodus from one country to another. And we're not talking about Mexico to the United States. We're talking about China to Japan. That's the cause. That's the effect. The cause is a repressive government. We're also talking about the latest chapter in the saga of why people in the West are running away from electric cars. And it has to do with not the cars themselves, but how they're charged. So, again, people are running away from electric cars. That's the effect. The cause, not enough charging stations, and it's about to get worse. Number 3, UFOs, UAPs, underwater flying UFOs. They are UFOs, but maybe we've just found the cause for this effect. Those are the three topics we're going to talk about. Cause and effect, today's essay on the James Strong Show. Before we do that, though, yesterday was May the 4th. May the 4th be with you is what all the Star Wars people say. Well, long before that became a moniker, before the air quotes, in air quotes, proud nerds said 5-4, May the 4th be with you. Ha, 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 I'm a nerd. 5-4 has been Dave Brubeck Day for a long, long, long time. Please don't ask me who was Dave Brubeck. If you don't know who Dave Brubeck is, you know nothing about music. He's arguably, well, he is one of the best jazz musicians ever to live. Arguably the best. Many people will say that. Maybe me, maybe not, but he's certainly one of the best. And his song, Take 5, you've heard it, is the best-selling jazz single of all time. Now, why is 5-4 called Dave Brubeck Day? Because Take 5, the best-selling jazz single in the history of music, was written in 5-4 time. So, happy Dave Brubeck Day, a day late. Just a little bit of an intro before we get into the full-blown essay of cause and effect. Word of the day, esquibo. What? That's right, esquibo. That's a word you've probably never heard of. Actually, if you listen to this podcast every day, or every week, I should say, or whenever I decide to make one, maybe 48 weeks a year I make a podcast, you've probably heard the term esquibo before. Okay, spelled E-S-S-E-Q-U-I-B-O. Remember that word, dear listeners, because that's the area of Guyana that's next to Venezuela that nobody cared about until they discovered oil. Now, there's a real good chance that Maduro and his superior army to Guyana is going to invade and try to take that oil territory from Guyana. While Venezuela is maybe the poorest country in Latin America. No, Cuba is. Maybe Haiti is, but those are both in the Caribbean. The poorest country in South America, they have a big army, and they have a lot more people than Guyana. Guyana has a police force and not a lot of people because the area of Essequibo, there's not many people that live there. But if Venezuela decides they're going to take this from Guyana, there's little that Guyana can do except for count on their neighbors, the UK, because it's an old UK colony, and I think still part of the Commonwealth, I'm not sure. Brazil, to the south of them, who's a very friendly neighbor and has told Venezuela hands off. And by the way, the United States. If either of those three countries have anything to do with it, it's going to be a sad day for Venezuela because that war will last hours, and that'll be it. However, if they decide to do nothing, there's very little that a police force can do against a standing army. So hopefully nothing will happen. But remember that word. You heard it here first, Essequibo. Now let's get into the full-blown essay, cause and effect. I'm a big fan on every effect has a cause. There's a reason why everything happens. Of course, not always, but usually, at least if not 100% of the time, at least part of the time. You can say, well, what about natural disasters, Strong? What about hurricanes? Well, okay. If you live in Florida, you're going to have hurricanes. If you live in California, you're going to have wildfires. If you live in the Midwest, you're going to have tornadoes. That's kind of cause and effect. If you want to avoid tornadoes, move to California. They don't have tornadoes there. If you want to avoid wildfires that wipe out total, square mile areas, move to Missouri. That doesn't happen there. Okay. If you want to avoid hurricanes, move to Minnesota. They don't have hurricanes there. Okay. But that's even natural disasters are part of cause and effect. Okay. But there's three things going on that we're going to discuss today. This is happening because that happened. Okay. And the very first one has to do with China. And Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, who basically their constitution says you can only run as premier for so long. He said, nope, I've changed my mind. I'm going to be premier for life. Some people argued about that. They were all thrown in jail or killed. So there was nobody to oppose Xi. He is now dictator for life, just like Mao Zedong was. Same thing, except for he wears a nicer suit, okay, and doesn't have rotten teeth. Other than that, he's the same thing as Mao Zedong. The problem with that is during the days of Mao Zedong, nobody had any money. Everybody was dirt poor, and the rich got 2 bowls of rice. The poor got a day. The poor got 1. Okay, nobody had anything in old-time China. Now, because of the Deng Xiaoping and his predecessors started to introduce a little bit of capitalism, more and more and more and more and more. And the Chinese people are no dummies. There were a lot of real smart guys. Jack Ma, who founded, brain fart, what was it? Alibaba, thank you. And many other Chinese businessmen who have made a lot of money in China. One problem with that, Xi wants the money in his pocket. Now, he'll not say, I say his pocket. He said, oh, no, this belongs to the people. Okay, the people means his pocket. Okay, funds his army to kill and jail his opponents. So basically, one of two things happen. Either you give your money to Xi and you stay, kind of like Jack Ma did, okay? You don't give your money to Xi and you get a life sentence in prison or you die. Maybe they kill you. Maybe you're found, maybe it's a suicide where, 3 bullets to the back of the head. It was a suicide, something like that. Or they throw you in jail for life and they just take all your funds. Or there's a third way. And this is what a lot of people have been doing. In fact, last year, the story of a Chinese guy named Tomo Hayashi. First of all, that's not even a Chinese name. It's a Japanese name. but his name is Tomo Hayashi. And he's the owner of a metal training firm that had moved to Tokyo from China. Well, his name is Tomo Hayashi because he quickly adopted a Japanese name. He spent the equivalent of about $650,000 on a luxury waterfront condo, and in March of this year, brought his family to join him. The 44-year-old newly named Hayashi, his two boys just started a Japanese elementary school, and he's one of many wealthy Chinese driving a boom in high-end Tokyo properties, and they're basically reshaping the whole city. Now, frustrations with Beijing's autocratic political system, which flared during the pandemic lockdowns, and they've only grown since then. They've helped drive the wave of people moving, Chinese people moving to Japan. Now, they're moving other places too, but Japan, they kind of like Japan because Mr. Hayashi, who like many Chinese, they just avoid discussing politics back home. The move to Tokyo was a challenge, but Hayashi says, look, we like Japan. The food is similar. The culture is similar. Education is good. It's a safe place to live. Now, Japan isn't the only place that have been a haven for Chinese people. The U.S., Canada, Singapore, that's been a place for Chinese too. People from Hong Kong, they've been going to the U.K. because it's an old colony. Okay, so they know China, or they know that the Chinese that live in Hong Kong know the U.K. But Japanese cities, they're just a few hour flights from China, okay? They're the leading choice for better off Chinese people. Japan's real estate prices are low because thanks to the weak yen, and these Chinese people who are moving have a lot of money. And it's fairly easy for them to purchase property. And the Japanese writing system, it does use some Chinese characters, so it's easier for them to adapt. I mean, you got to remember, the past few years I've learned Spanish. I'm still learning, but it's still, the pronunciations are about the same. Some letters are pronounced differently, but it's the same alphabet. They throw in one or two other letters that we don't have with tildes over them, etc. But for the most part, it's a alphabet phonetic language, whereas Chinese are characters. So is Japanese, and they share characters. So it's not quite as difficult for Chinese to learn the Japanese language and the Japanese writing system. In fact, sometimes they can look at it and they can read it without knowing anything else because they can figure it out. Kind of like you can read French or Spanish sometimes just because some of the words are similar, okay? Now, there was a report last June by an organization called Henley and Partners, and it tracks worldwide migration trends and estimated that a net total of 13,500 high net worth Chinese people would migrate overseas during the year, making China the biggest worldwide loser in wealthy people. About 1/3 of the condos on the floor of a 48-story building where Hayashi lives are owned by Chinese people. Okay, and basically they just moved to Japan because it's a better life. Now, Tomo Hayashi Brokers said, that's an organization, said Chinese buyers were also eager to buy resort properties. Now, on the northern island of Hokkaido, a town called Furano is near ski slopes, and they saw residents pay prices 28% higher last year than this year. That's the fastest rate in all of Japan. Hideku Ishii, he's a local broker, said wealthy Chinese from the mainland, Hong Kong, and Singapore were looking for vacation homes. A red tsunami is coming, and the Chinese flag is in tow, said the broker. Now, Chinese people who want to move to Japan and buy an apartment or house generally face two challenges: getting their money into Japan and getting a visa. Now, China restricts how much its residents can take out of the country, but many Chinese buyers own companies with international operations, or they have overseas investments. Now, there's a broker who says his clients usually have a bank account in Hong Kong or Singapore from which they can wire money. Now, one exception, he said, was a client who bought a property for $190,000. And he basically mobilized friends and relatives to just carry cash little by little as they came over. So they took it out a little bit at a time, and pretty soon they had all the money out of China. Now, as for the visa, people who invest the equivalent of at least $32,000 in a Japanese business that has a permanent office and 2 or more employees can get a business management visa from Japan. Now, other Chinese obtain a visa for what Japan calls a high-level specialist in business technologies or academia. Now, a number of Chinese with the technology version, software engineers and people like that, that figure rose 30% between 2019 and 2023. More than 10,000 of them come over. Now, holders can apply for permanent residency in Japan in as little as 1 year under a point system that favors those with high salaries and advanced degrees. Now, once settled, many Chinese opt to use a Japanese name, especially on legal records in Japan. Some turn to Japanese readings of their names and the Chinese characters, while others just pick a totally, entirely new name, new identity. They're a new person. Now, in addition to the convenience when dealing with Japanese people, using a Japanese name allows people of Chinese origin to keep a low profile back home, where they typically still have family. In other words, they've changed their name. The government doesn't know who you are. Now, that may be helpful because Chinese authorities tend to frown on the trend of people moving out with their assets. Now, Chinese social media platforms like Weibo is the Chinese equivalent to Facebook, Little Red Book, and WeChat, they're all abuzz with the talk of the purchasing real estate in Japan. Now, there's some censorship in China. Shocking, I know. But citing government regulation, Weibo blocks searches using a hashtag that translates Chinese investors are flooding into Tokyo to buy houses. Now, China's no different from this country, whereas the officials aren't that smart. How do the people get around it? They eliminate the hashtag. Yeah, they just put the words. They just take the hashtag off. And then the bot doesn't catch it, and the Chinese secret police don't show up at your house. So there you have it. People are fed up with the Chinese government. Now, most people can do nothing about it because they're powerless. They're just common folk. But the rich and wealthy, they're on their way out. By the way, just a question. How many people do you think are leaving countries? I mentioned that the main countries that these Chinese are going to. Japan by far is the biggest one because it's close and the language is close. But also Singapore and the United States and Canada and the UK. Those 4 countries, guess how many are leaving those countries to go to China to live because things are better? Dear listeners, I tried to research it, and I couldn't find a case where there was one. Now, there might be one, but I couldn't find it. There might be 1 or 2, but there's certainly not tens of thousands every year. Cause and effect. You don't treat your people right in a country, they're going to go where it's better. That's just something that happens. Cause and effect number 2. There's a trend in this country all of a sudden to go away from electric cars. And you think, well, how could that be? Electric cars are the future. The government's not going to let you own an ICE car, internal combustion engine. It's free. You don't pay gas tax. There's all kinds of good stuff going on. Why would electric cars be falling out of favor? Well, the truth of the matter is the number of electric cars sold every year, every month continues to go up, but not at the rate it was going up in the past. In fact, not at the rate that they expected it to, and certainly not the rate at which car companies are investing in and building. In fact, one of the cars with the most inventory that they need to sell is the Ford Mustang EV. Same thing with Volvo's EV. They've built a lot of them because everybody wants them, right? Wrong. Nobody wants them. Not nobody, but not many people want them. And there's tons and tons of inventory on both of these cars. They're among the top 10 cars that just don't sell in this country, okay? But the thing with electric cars, the main reason people don't like electric cars is because America is used to, I'm down to a quarter tank. Let me spend 5 minutes pulling the filling station, fill it up, and go. Okay? Can't do that with an electric car. But that's okay because Tesla was building these charging stations all over the country, and they were adapting these charging stations to accept other cars as well, just not Teslas. So the problem's being solved. Tesla's the big daddy on the block. They're building these charging stations. They had a whole business. What do I want to say? Like a business group that did this. Okay. But Tesla moved last week to lay off much, if not all, of the team responsible for creating the largest and most successful electric vehicle charging network in the U.S. And this threw the industry last week into a state of shock and confusion. Now, the layoffs halted construction work at dozens of supercharger sites in Texas. In New York, property owners in negotiation with Tesla were left hanging as discussions about adding chargers to their sites were ongoing. Now, the upheaval comes as the EV industry struggles with sluggish sales growth and a bumpy rollout of a national highway charging network. The Tesla layoffs were sweeping and included employees in the sales force and those overseeing the construction of charging sites. That's according to people familiar with the decision. Now, contractors and executives at other automakers that have partnered with Tesla on charging described widespread confusion over the future of Tesla's charging business. Now, Tesla has long been the bright spot in a messy charging world, outbuilding and outperforming other companies to create the closest thing the U.S. has to a national highway network. Now, that's considered the linchpin to greater EV adoption, like I mentioned earlier. A Tesla pullback in EV charging could also slow the entire U.S. market. Now, Tesla, like I said, opened up its network to other cars, and it's been chasing and winning public funding for chargers. In fact, the Biden administration has set aside $5 billion for a highway network. Okay, that was a 2021 law. Now, the layoffs caught some employees by surprise. In fact, should have caught them all by surprise. In fact, one person who was laid off said, while he understood what the company was in a precarious situation, the charging business had been viewed as a priority among employees. Tesla shares, how did Wall Street respond? Well, fell after the announcement, it fell 1.8%, their shares. That was after it fell 5.6% the day before. Okay. The departures also baffled the charging industry as a whole. Now, after Tesla opened its charging to other cars, major automakers spent last summer announcing a switch to the Tesla-designed charging connector and signed agreements that allowed their customers to access the Tesla supercharged network. Tesla should take things more carefully in the future because increasing amounts of people are depending on them. In the case of infrastructure projects, there's a lot of sites that are under development, including those that federal awards are attached to. That's according to a spokesman. Now, earlier, a publication called The Information reported that Elon Musk, check this out, in an internal email sent Monday of last week, said he would dismiss everyone in the supercharger group, and its senior director, Rebecca Tanucci, was leaving the company. Now, dismissing everyone in the supercharger group, firing everybody, that tells me you're shutting it down, folks. Tesla, who's the world's most valuable automaker, last week said its first quarter profit plunged to its lowest level since 2021. They're still making money, but not like before. Tesla plans to slash more than 10% of its global workforce amid broader cooling in customer demand for electric vehicles. Now, the charging pullback is the latest blow to the waning growth in EV sales. Now, over the start of last year, automakers were having a hard time keeping up with demand for EVs, but the well of willing customers proved more shallow than they expected. Now, an early wave of adopters made their purchases, and by last summer, dealers began warning of unsold electric vehicles clogging their lots. Now, within months, automakers were scaling down their plans for EVs and adding hybrids to their lineup as those rose in popularity, because you can bring those over to a gas station and fill them up in 5 minutes. Now, at least some of the reason for the EV hesitancy is the nation's fledgling charging network. The ability to repower cars in 30 minutes and let drivers hopscotch from charger to charger across the country is considered essential to putting EV drivers at ease. Remember, a supercharging station that charges your car quickly still takes a half an hour, friends. That's a long time to me. Now, Tesla is known for building charging stations cheaper and faster than competitors. Its installations are up around 19% this year through March, over 1,500 charging ports in the country. That's according to a firm called EV Adoption. Now, that's more than 4 times as many pieces of equipment as the nearest charging provider. Now, a gentleman named Andres Andres Pinter. He's the CEO of Bullet EV Charging Systems, a contractor building dozens of supercharger sites for Tesla in Texas, said all 20 of its contacts at Tesla have been laid off. All of them. Now, Pinter has received a series of bounce-back emails. This email address is no longer valid. Any future emails will not be received, and no other communications with the company. So he just stopped construction at all sites. Now, a Tesla slowdown could leave a gap in the market for others to fill. That's according to Carleen Cullen. She's a co-founder and executive director of Cool the Earth, which advocates for EV adoption and charging reliability. Friends, that is the ultimate chart, cause and effect. Now, Elon Musk also said earlier this week, look, we're still going to build these EV stations. We might slow down a little bit, but we're still moving on. We're still moving forward. He fired everybody in the system, in that group. He fired them all. How are you going to do that? Okay. Yeah, we're still going to continue on, but we fired everybody. No, you're not, because you're not making money on it. And that's the whole thing. This whole EV thing. And I'm not anti-EV cars. For some people, I think it's wonderful. We have a friend, she bought an EV, and she doesn't drive very far to work. She's got a charging station at home. She never takes long trips, so an EV is perfect for her. She charges it at home. She drives it. Every few days she plugs it in. Life is good. It's reliable, inexpensive transportation. But that's not how most people drive, okay? And here's the biggest thing. The Biden administration has already put aside $5 billion to build charging stations. You and I to build charging stations. You know why there's no charging stations out there? Because nobody can make money on building a charging station, because they don't charge for a charging station. Is there a shortage of gas stations out there? Of course not, because they make money. You build a gas station, somebody comes in, they fill up their car with gasoline, they pay you money, you make a profit, and they leave. Okay? Charging stations don't work that way. Tesla charging station, you don't pay anything for. You kind of get a subscription. Like for so long, I think if you buy the right car, you get you can charge for free anywhere you want. But that's just for some of the higher end ones. Other than that, they don't charge much. Okay, they can't charge much. There are some independent ones that do charge, and the ones that do charge, it's not a lot cheaper than gasoline. So think about this. That's the solution to having charging stations throughout the country. Let the free market take over and let them build charging stations and then charge for them so they can make a profit. But that can't happen and have EV cars be a thing, because then they cost as much to run as an ICE car, okay? Hey, but they're green. Okay, well, in Missouri, I look outside my window and I see the Labadie coal plant pumping out fluorocarbons to charge people's EVs, so they're not clean. Now, again, I still say the future of automobiles are EVs. But when the government mandates it, it doesn't work. Mainly because when the government tries to mandate things to be a certain way because they want to form your life, it doesn't work. What the government is doing with EVs is along the same vein of what the Chinese government is doing in their country, forcing the people's hand to do something they don't want to do. And when the largest provider of charging stations fires everybody in the charging station business with his company, things aren't looking good. Joe Biden even says, I got $5 billion I'm going to give you to build charging stations. That wasn't even enough. Sorry, that's chump change. I don't want it. Still can't make money. Cause and effect, my friends. Cause and effect number 3. And this is the fun one, okay? This is the one I love. As you know, I'm a big fan of UFOs, of Bigfoot, of all that paranormal stuff. And I really do think that there's a logical explanation to all this kind of stuff. I've mentioned before with Bigfoot. Do I think there's a Bigfoot? I don't know. Maybe not. But if there is, there's parts of this country in the Pacific Northwest, in the mountains of Pennsylvania, and in the deep South swamps where people just don't go. And there could be a lost tribe of people or a animal that's off the grid or whatever. It could be a lot of things. Okay. What if it's a group of families that have just lived in this area for generations? Okay. People are mistaken. Yeah, they stumble upon something and they thought it was 10 feet tall. Really, it was 6 feet tall. It was filthy and hairy, but it's never had a bath in its life. It was a person. Okay. Or it was some type of a hominin that's still left over and still around. Okay. They find species all the time in areas that are not known. Okay. That's probably what Bigfoot is, if Bigfoot exists. And UFOs, we may have just found out what one of the UFOs, in fact, underwater UFOs, may have been. For years now, I've been talking about underwater UFOs, UFOs they call them in the ufology world. But I've been talking about those for years, primarily off the coast of Southern California. We may have figured out what it is. In fact, April, that's last month, Northrop Grumman Corporation unveiled the first image online of the full-scale prototype called the Manta Ray. It's an innovative, uncrewed. It's an innovative, uncrewed underwater vehicle. Uncrewed underwater vehicle is another acronym, UUV, uncrewed underwater vehicle. Okay. It's extra large glider. It says underwater. It's designed to take extended duration, long range, payload capable undersea missions independently without requiring on-site human logistics. Now, the Manta Ray prototype, which recently underwent comprehensive full-scale testing off the coast of Southern California during February and March of this year. Now, according to DARPA, DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. I'm not going to say it's a black ops agency. It's kind of maybe a gray ops agency where they tell you where the money comes from, but maybe not all the money and not all of it from where it comes. But the testing phase is focused on evaluating the vehicle's hydrodynamic performance in real-world conditions. Now, that includes submerged operations utilizing all modes of propulsion and steering, buoyancy, propellers, controlled surfaces, and the like. Now, DARPA released 3 new photos of the prototype. In fact, Google Manta Ray UUV, and they'll come up, and it's really sharp looking. Okay, they released 3 photos of the prototype during the testing in the Pacific Ocean earlier this week. Now, Dr. Kyle Warner, he's the DARPA program manager for the Manta Ray, he emphasized the successful testing as a milestone in advancing the vehicle towards operational readiness. Now, the vehicle's modular design facilitated rapid assembly in the field, showcasing a unique capability for an extra-large UUV. Now, Northrop Grumman, they built it. They transported the Manta Ray prototype in modular sections from its construction site in Maryland to the testing site in California. Now, this approach not only demonstrated efficient shipping and assembly logistics, but also highlighted the potential for rapid deployment globally without requiring extensive pier space at naval facilities. That's a big deal. Direct shipping the vehicle to its operational area conserves energy that would otherwise be expended during transit. Okay. That's the green way of saying we can get it from point A to point B without anybody seeing it. Okay. Now, that's what Warner says. Now, once deployed, the vehicle utilizes efficient buoyancy-driven gliding navigation through the water. It features multiple payload bays of varying sizes and types, enabling diverse naval mission capabilities. Now, the development of the Manta Ray systems from a DARPA initiative focused on advancing crucial technologies for future underwater unmanned vehicle designs. Again, UUV, remember that an acronym. This program targets advancements in energy management techniques, enhanced payload capabilities, enhanced payload capacities as well, low power propulsion systems, and other key areas aimed at improving UUV capabilities. Now, Northrop Grumman also indicates that the Manta Ray will feature advanced command, control, and communications capabilities, facilitating extended duration operations with minimal human oversight. So just set it and forget it. Now, the data collected by manta ray will enhance decision-making for the joint forces, providing a strategic advantage during missions. Now, back in 2021, Northrop Grumman was awarded the Phase 2 contract to further the manta rays program that was initiated in 2020. Under Phase 2, the project involved the development of full-scale demonstration vehicles by two prime contractors. One was Northrop Grumman, the other one was Martin Defense Group. That used to be the old Martin Marietta. Each contractor is tasked with creating unique vehicles to showcase specific capabilities within the manta ray program. So there you have it. All these underwater UFOs, or I guess they're calling them UUVs, they weren't from another planet. They were Martin Marietta and Northrop Grumman running prototypes throughout the sea, trying to compete for this contract. Wonder what else they've got under there they haven't told us. You know, the government doesn't tell us everything. Did you know that? Did you suspect that? I suspect that you did, and I know that you knew that. So there you have it. So that's it. Cause and effect. And there's so many other things in this world. In fact, most everything is cause and effect. You work hard, you're successful. You sleep till noon, you get fired. I mean, from your job. You save your money, you can retire. You don't save your money, you're going to cry in your beer and say, I don't have any money. I mean, it's everything else, okay? That's kind of how things work. There's exceptions to the rule, but not often. That's it. We're done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's my email address. Send me your emails. In fact, this the DARPA story that came from a listener. So send me your stories. Send me your ideas. Send me your emails. I love to answer your emails. I do answer each and every email. Sometimes it takes me a while because I get busy, but I do answer them all eventually. And thank you, dear listeners, for your support. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.